Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And let me start by thanking the Turkish-American Association for hosting this event and co-organizing this event with the British Institute of Ankara. I'm Elisabetta Costa. I'm the Assistant Director of the British Institute of Ankara, or the BIAA, as you probably know it. I'm really happy to introduce tonight Dr. Elisabetta Costa, specifically because she's the new BIAA postdoctoral fellow 2015-2016. She arrived in Ankara in September. A social and cultural anthropologist with a broad range of research interests, including social media, digital activism, journalism, kinship, and gender, and a regional experience that expands from Turkey to Lebanon and the entire Middle East. Elisabetta has been awarded a PhD by the University of Milan Bicocca.
Yes.
Bicocca, that's right. It's difficult to pronounce this. In June 2011, with a doctoral research about news production among foreign correspondents and local journalists in Beirut. Since then, she moved to the UK at UCL, at the anthropology department, and she got engaged in a very interesting project titled the Global Social Media Impact Study, a cross-country and comparative study of between many countries in the world about the impact of social media in private and public lives all around the world. As part of this, she conducted a 15-month-long fieldwork in Mardin, in Turkey, focusing especially on the impact of social media on politics, gender, and intimate relations. Advocating what is called, I don't know if you will talk about this, popular anthropology.
Yeah, I will mention something.
Okay.
Yes.
So just what I noted in your CV and in your blog.
Okay.
Elisabetta is keeping a research blog,
yeah,
which is very interesting because it aims at accessing the not academic crowds, let's say. So posts like, does Facebook produce reality, or love is sending 400 texts to your girlfriend every day. There are very interesting and very funny to read stuff, but at the same time very informative. So, Elisa came to Ankara with an impressive record for this year. She has one monograph, a collective book, and a special issue, edited special issue, ready to come out in the next months.
yes.
And the work we're going to listen to today comes from this bulk of work. So, thank you very much for the presentation tonight. Just before giving you the floor, I want to inform you that with this talk we introduce a new form in the series of BIAA talks and BIAA talks, which is the collaboration with a discussant. So, I'm really happy to present Professor Dr. Julius Ger and say that we are really happy that you are our first discussant in this series. And Professor Dr. Julius Ger is working at Bilkent University since 1986, full professor since 1999, carrying a vast international experience, either as a visiting professor in major universities all around the world, like from the US, the UK, China, Australia, and as you just told us, you're now going to Rio to organize a workshop. But also as the board member and a contributor to a large number of highly esteemed international and academic journals in the fields of consumer, market, and cultural studies. Her interests expand across several fields, and it's difficult to give a full account here, but among them, the most relevant for today's presence here is the focus on image and identity construction through commercial and consumer practices, the play between the ordinary and the exceptional in practices of consumerism and image making, and furthermore, her expertise in exploring methods of and practice of qualitative research and multi-sided ethnography. A perfect discussant for Elisa's talk. So, without further ado, I'll give you the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very nice presentation, introduction, and thank you for coming. So, in this lecture of today, I will present the results of my research that is about the uses of social media in Mardin, the uses and the impact of social media in Mardin, that, as you all know, is a medium-sized town located in southeast Turkey. And it's a multicultural, multi-ethnic town that is inhabited by Arabs and Kurds mainly, but there are also Turks, there are Orthodox Syriacs, there are few Armenians, and recently there are also Syrians and Yazidi refugees. So why a research on social media in a place like Mardin? I've been asked these questions several times by different kind of people. In Mardin, a lot of people from Mardin ask me why I chose that place for such a kind of research, but also people in Turkey and abroad, and in England or Italy. There are different reasons why I chose Mardin. First of all, there are a lot of research about the impact of social media in the so-called Western world. So for those who are interested in the topic, I mean, you can find really a lot of publication about this topic, about research that were done in North America or Europe. And there are less research done in the rest of the world. And when this research have been done, they mainly focus in big metropolitan areas. So, for example, we had a lot of studies about the uses of social media during the Gezi Park protests, or during the Arab Spring, or during, for example, the protests in Tehran in 2009. And also, the second reason is that there is often the tendency to imagine that the same technology is used in the same way and it has the same effects all around the world. This view comes with the idea that the diffusion of the same digital technologies bring cultural homogenization. And this is what has been called technology determinism. So a same media, a same technologies is used in the same way all around the world. This is what a lot of some media scholars usually assume. But this research was based on different kind of assumptions. Anthropological studies have shown that same technologies in different places are used in radically different ways, and they have different kinds of effects and different impact. And so there is not a unique model of change. So my research was wanting to investigate the social change brought by social media, and the only way to understand it is to do a very localized research. My research, so, is about social media social change, and it investigates whether and to what extent social media has brought transformations, or whether it has rather reproduced social patterns already existing in the offline world. And my results are quite different from the results emerged in other research carried out in other places of the world. Why? Because, as Leo said before, this was not an isolated research, but it was part of a wider project based at UCL Anthropology in London. It's a comparative project that involves 9 different researchers who did research a long-term ethnography in 9 different countries all around the world. So Trinidad, Brazil, Chile, UK, Italy, Turkey, North and South China. And it was a collaborative and comparative research project, and the results of this comparison will be published in this book that will be launched in February together with my monograph. But in this book we will present the results of the comparative, of the comparison. And the most interesting results is that social media have been used in very different ways in these different 9 field sites. And so what did we do? I mean, each of us used a traditional ethnographic approach. So this means spending 15 months, in our case, in a delimited area, and hanging around with people, talking with them, spending time with them. We did what has been called participant observation. It's the traditional methodology in anthropological research. And each of us chose a small or a medium-sized town, so each of us chose a delimited area. In my case, I did participant observation, but I also carried out around 100 in-depth interviews, and a lot of, between 300 and 400 questionnaires in order to compare all more quantitative and qualitative data. And we also did a comparison between online ethnography and offline ethnography. This is also an interesting particularities of this research, because usually media scholars just limit their analysis to the online world, many cases. But in this research, we compare both the online and the offline practice. And yes, so, and each of us went to the field site for 15 months between April 2014 and August 2014. Mardin. So I chose Mardin. You probably all know Mardin because in Turkey is a touristic destination, and it's the image of the old city in Mardin are present in the touristic pamphlets. And I know that Mardin became also the setting for some serial TVs and some films in Turkey. So, I mean, and it became known because it's an historical place with very nice buildings, with the Arab and Artuklu styles architecture. And and then the old city is located on the top of the hill, facing the Mesopotamia flat valley, so the view, as you can see, is very nice and very beautiful. And on the top of the hill there is a castle that unfortunately is closed to the visitors because it's still a military area, so I couldn't go there. And also the few academic research about Mardin have been based all in the old city because they were carried out 10, 15 years ago. However, my research was not based in what people think Mardin is, but it was based in the new city. That is exactly what you are seeing now. And this area of the city didn't exist at all until 20 years ago. It started to be built in the last 15 years, and it expanded really a lot in 15 years. So it has around 40,000 inhabitants now, and it could be considered an example of what the investment in the construction sector under the AKP government have produced in some area of Southeast Turkey. So even now, I mean, there are so many buildings under construction, there are mosques under construction, and the streets are full of dust because the city is expanding and expanding more and more. So, who are the people living in the new city of Mardin, where I did my research? There are a lot of people who moved from the old city. They are mainly Arab speakers, they are Arabs. They decided to move to the new city because they were attracted by the modernity of the new city and by the comforts of the new modern buildings, by a proper heating system that they don't have it in the old city. And they were attracted also by the new shops, modern shops, and the new services. But there are also a lot of people who moved to the city, to the new city of Mardin from the other towns of the province for the same reason. They were attracted by the modernity of the new city. And the new city of Mardin is definitely the most modern place in all the province. So, as I said in this introduction, the city is particular in terms of its demographic composition, because there is a co-presence of Arabs and Kurds, and Syrian Christians and Turks as well. And there is a long history of political violence since the time of the Ottoman Empire, and during also the beginning of the centuries. The Kurds were those who perpetrated the massacres against the Armenians in 1915. And then during the 80s and the 90s, the conflict between the state and the PKK was experienced in a very particular way, because most of the Arab population has always been loyal to the government. Since the time of the Ottoman Empire and during the Turkish Republic, they always supported the government, whatever kind of government was at the head of the country. So, while the Kurds were not. So now the city politically is kind of split between AKP supporters and what was called BDP at the time of my research, supporters. So I was interested, because I was interested in politics and in social media, I thought that this kind of place could have revealed interesting things about the political usage of social media. I thought, wow, it's an interesting place, let's go there and let's see what social media how social media are used for political expression and political reasons. However, and this is one of the interesting findings of my research, I found out that social media didn't really have a significant impact in terms of politics. I will explain you then why. But social media did have an impact in other fields of the social life. And this impact had to do with the desires of young women and men to experience premarital relationships, premarital romance, and to expand their network of friendships in a conservative society that is still based on gender segregation. So the main consequences of social media were not designed by the designers of the platform itself. Mark Zuckerberg, the creator of Facebook in California, of course couldn't imagine that this could have been the impact of Facebook in Mardin. But I mean, the effects of social media were not even planned in advance by its users. So the social change brought by social media was not the result of an organization, of an organized activities, of a political action. So it was not planned in advance by anybody. So what kind of social media are used in Mardin? The most massively used social media is Facebook. It's used almost by everybody in the age between 15 and 35. It's used more by men than women. Some women tend to not use social media, but at least each of them in that age used Facebook at least a few times in her life. While adult people, let's say from 45 and over, there is a big gender gap because men tend to use social media more often than women. Housewife women that are a lot in that age usually don't use the internet. It's something that they are not really they are not interested to do it unless they are university educated people. But this is a minority in that age group. And there are no old people using social media in Mardin. So. And the other platforms are Instagram and Twitter, and WhatsApp. Instagram and Twitter were not used too much. They were mainly used by a minority of university students or a minority of university-educated people. While WhatsApp became increasingly used during the time of my fieldwork. It started to arrive in summer 2013, and it expanded more in 2014. So how, media scholars tend to look at different social media, tend to see the practice of usage of social media as defined and shaped by the platform. So they tend to study the uses of Facebook as divided from the uses of Instagram, as divided from the uses of WhatsApp, for example. But this is not the way I look at social media. I rather look at social media as the configuration of different online spaces that differ from each other and this I will introduce my new concept, they differ from each other on the basis of the number and the kind of people that inhabited this place. To give you an example, the public Facebook, where the audience was mainly formed by few hundred people, few hundred friends or relatives, was very similar to the public Instagram. People were sharing similar pictures on the public Facebook and the public Instagram, whereas they were sharing completely different kinds of information on the private chat of WhatsApp or on the private chat of Facebook. So it's not the platform itself that matters, but it's the kind of spaces that is created online. And what makes the difference is the number and the kind of people that inhabit this space. So as a project, we created this concept of scalable sociality that refers to the idea of social media as creator of new online spaces that can vary between the most private and the most public, and the smallest group to the largest group. Usually, most of the media before social media were mainly one-to-many, as the TV or the radio, or one-to-one, like the phone. Whereas on social media there is new configuration of space that vary between the private and the public, the smallest and the largest group. What is interesting in my research that the most common uses of social media had to do either with the very public or the very private. And there is this dichotomy of very public and very private that crossed all my research, and I will show now what I mean with that. So it's important, this dichotomy, it's important to understand gender relationships and also politics on social media. And by understanding this dichotomy between the very public and the very private, we can grasp the social change that was facilitated and brought by new technologies. So the social media, the social change in Mardin, the social change brought by social media, is not a linear and uniform process, but rather the combination of conflictual and opposite transformations. So the research shows that more public social media, like the Facebook walls, are very conservative spaces where traditional norms ruling of life are reproduced, reinforced, and brought even further. And this happens mainly because public-facing social media are constantly under the gazes of friends, neighbors, and relatives, more than offline public spaces such as streets or cafes. Whereas more private online spaces are often used to create and maintain new types of social relationships that break with existing social norms and traditional family ties. And this comparison between the very public and the very social media was an important finding of the research. So what people share on the public-facing social media? In this case, I focus on my analysis on Facebook because it was the social media used by everybody. So on Facebook, people post what they know is going to be constantly under the gaze of others. So the public Facebook is a place under surveillance, social surveillance. They want to show off, and in order to do so, they show the best qualities and their best characteristics. They show off and they present a traditional self that follows traditional norms and conservative and reproduce conservative values. What do I mean with these words? If I did a comparison between the comparison between the different Facebook walls of people from urban and rural background. They had completely different lifestyle in the offline world. People from urban background could easily hang out, drinking alcohol, spending time with mixed gender group of friends. And people from a rural background, no. We're living a more conservative lifestyle. But the Facebook wall, the public Facebook, really looked similar to each other. They were really similar. Why? Because on the public Facebook there are relatives, there are family relatives, there are friends of the families, and it reproduced the same settings of the traditional society made by relatives. So what I observe on the public Facebook, there are a lot of individual portraits. People don't like to show relationships for different reasons, because friendship relationships, as I said, are not something that people can show off very easily, and family relationships are usually belong to the private spheres, and they've never been traditionally presented in public, except few situations like weddings, etc. And men usually perform a very, they want to appear more professional, successful as they are in the offline life. It's very common to wear very elegant clothes, even if they dress very informal and sportive clothes in their daily life. Whereas women, there are different kinds of femininity portrayed on Facebook. Either women highlight their aesthetic beauty, or they don't post their Facebook profile picture. More religious women tend to post verses from the Quran, while women from rural backgrounds usually have a completely anonymous profile because they are not allowed to use Facebook by the families. Then there are a lot of pictures of food. And because people, I don't know how it is in the rest of Turkey, but of course there are a lot of analogies, but you will tell me at the end of the presentation. And my understanding of this is that food is a way to show off, at least in Mardin, to show off the presence of a rich social life and of a happy life with good food and good friends. But at the same time, they could show this without showing the faces of the people. That it was something that was not really well seen. And there were then a lot of pictures of holiday trip again to show off the presence of a very nice life and enjoyable life. The public Facebook is a place to show off. This is what people told me continuously when I was there. And then there are a lot of memes, different kind of memes. religious memes, philosophical memes. People used to post different verses from Plato to Osho to Iranian poets, etc., etc. Again, to present and portray a moral and a knowledge and well-educated self. So we can say that the public Facebook is a conservative Facebook in this sense, in the sense that the social relationships that are presented there are even more traditional than the social relationships existing in the offline world. But there is some difference. There are some novelties, and this novelty have to do with the presence of. Sorry, I lost the page. Okay. With the presence of images from the intimate life. So presence of couples, presence of the family, images of children in the private and intimate sphere of the house that for the first time started to appear in the public Facebook. And this is something new, and it's something that people didn't really like too much. So a lot of people complain about that. Those who didn't like social media were mentioning this in particular. They didn't like to show off what is part of the intimate and the domestic sphere. And this is, for example, completely different from what happens in Europe or in North America, where people usually like to show off their personal relationship on social media. This is it's an interesting difference. So, this conservative public space stands in contrast with what I call the private space of social media. And in this sense, we can say that social media have contributing to a revolution that was not planned, it was not consciously organized, but rather a consequence of the desire of young women and men to explore premarital romance in a highly gender-segregated society. I've been told several times by many people in their late 20s and 30s that we are living an epochal revolution. Social media are like an explosion that is changing everything. Teenagers and young adults are living completely different lives from the previous generation. Yamur, I will tell you a story, is a 23-year-old modern Arab religious woman employed in a local office. As with the majority of her friends, she's involved in a premarital relationship, in her case with Fatih, a boy she met the year before while working as a shop assistant. The majority of Yamur's female relatives and friends knew about the relationship, but kept it hidden from the male members of the family, as long as the relationship remained discreet and not sexual. While they rarely meet face-to-face, Yamur and Fatih spend many hours every day chatting on their smartphone. They send up to 600 WhatsApp messages a day. On Facebook, they privately store and comment on the pictures portraying them together during the few times they met face-to-face. And these are images that could destroy Yamur's reputation if made public. I'm not using real name. I change and swap names, of course. They make video calls on Tango, where she appears unveiled, and they patrol each other's Facebook profiles, and they get very jealous whenever a person of their opposite sex writes a comment. All of this led to Fatih being sent to military prison, since when on military service he could not stop himself using his smartphone outside the loud hours. Even though this may not lead to sexual encounters, the frequency and depth of such relationships has entirely changed the experience of young people regarding cross-gender relationships. This leads older people, even in their 30s, to claim young people don't know what real love is. When I was young, I didn't touch the hand of my husband until the night after our wedding. And for years, I desired and dreamt about love. Love is dreaming about it. Now young people walk hand by hand few days after having met each other, and they will never understand what love is. And this does have consequences. Marriages have become more and more the result of secret and semi-secret premarital relationships, and less the outcome of arrangements between families. It's not that it's just because of social media, but social media did play a big role. Women increasingly act as individuals with their wills and desires that are independent from those of their family, leading to the rise of new conflicts between fathers and daughters, husbands and wives, older brothers and younger sisters. So smartphones and social media have increased individual connectivity and have challenged family-based communications, producing new conflicts and new changes. Social media and these new forms of communication and romance, however, have not eliminated ideal forms of traditional marriage, which continue to remain rooted and strong. It was very common at the time of my research for young people to meet on social media and spending some time together and then getting married and publicly presenting the marriage as an arranged marriage. So all this transformation happened on a secret level, and the public level, either online or offline, is completely different. But the online is even more conservative than the offline. Although experiences of premarital romantic love existed well before social media, as many stories are heard from middle-aged and old people made evident, social media made these significantly more frequent. And just like in the past, most of these new kinds of intimate friendship have been experienced privately and only with absolute discretion. Also in the past, premarital couples could meet secretly, but they had very few options. In Mardin, they used to meet in the cave, there are a few caves, in the courtyard of the mosque, as they told me, and in the castle, but now it's closed to the public and it's used as a military zone. More recently, there are also shopping malls and many modern cafes where people of young men and young women can meet, but they still demand discretion and caution. By contrast, Facebook, WhatsApp, SMS, Viber, Tango, and the phone are highly accessible alternatives, and the result is unprecedented. So social media has created a unique and pliable architecture molded by its users to secretly live and not just imagine their love stories and yet keep them strictly hidden. So this contrast between the public and the private space is, as I said, is one important lens to understand what social media are producing in Mardin. But if we move from this level to another level, that is the political level, we see that the situation is also quite similar. It's not so different. So this contrast between private and public is also clear and evident in the political domain. The public social media, even in this case, is a conservative place. As a result, for mainly two different forces that I call state surveillance and social surveillance. So it's not only a matter of, like in the case before, of pleasing others and following social norms and being well appreciated by the other Facebook users, but in this case it's also a matter of conforming their behavior to what like the state wants you to do. So what happened? What happens in the public domain offline in Mardin? Okay. Offline, people, in the streets of the town, people don't talk about politics because there is a history of political violence. People tend to not discuss politics in public space. They just discuss it in their private houses. On social media is the same. For the first few months, I saw really few political posts on Facebook, and that was interesting. But it was really interesting to see how this situation was even reinforced. Why? I will present you the case of the local election of March 2014. The silence around politics during the rest of the years, during the political election, was suddenly broken. And it was really surprising to see how people started to talk about politics every day. The results of the election were not known in Mardin, differently from other areas of Turkey and Southeast Turkey. People didn't know if AKP or BDP was going to win. Because the demographic composition of the town changed in the last years. There were more Kurds than Arabs, and also because AKP, because of the Fethullah Gulen events, not all the AKP supporters were going to vote for AKP. So the campaign was really heated, and people didn't know what was going to happen. So suddenly everybody started to take part in meetings and gatherings in the political offices, in the offices of the political parties. The town was full of posters and vans, and there was BNP, AKP and Sadet that was taking the votes of the Fethullah Gulen supporters. And the streets were full of flags in the old city and in the new city. So the silence that was there every single day of the year before the political election was suddenly broken. What happened online? Online, nobody was posting anything about politics, almost anything. I mean, out of few hundred Facebook friends I had, there were only, like in 1 month, there were only very few political posts, but there were mainly ironic posts, like this one. And nobody was actively supporting one candidate or one party. And so, like the rest of the year, the public space continued to be a place where politics were not discussed, not debated, and not made visible. This happened for different reasons. People's main concern was to maintain good relationships with others. And these others were people from Mardin who were supporting potentially other political groups, and had different ideas. And also they didn't want to lose their faces. Openly supporting a political candidate, if this candidate would have lost the election, was not really good for the reputation. So it's a kind of code of honor that is a traditional topic in anthropology that is like reproduced online as well. So it's important, I mean, it's interesting to see how this concern for social relationship really shaped the way people use social media in different domains, in the political one as well. However, if we move from the online, from the level of local politics to national politics, the situation is quite different. Kurds and supporters of the Kurdish movement were not using social media a lot. I mean, there was an important self-censorship that was playing a big role. People were afraid to post political posts on Facebook. And self-censorship influenced the way they were using social media. I'm talking about ordinary people. They didn't discuss politics, they didn't sustain a political candidate, they didn't openly criticize the government unless they had fake accounts. There were very few political posts. But on the other hand, AKP supporters were quite politically active, much more than the others. And they were using social media quite a lot to express their ideas. For example, during the Gezi Park protests, there were a lot of memes and a lot of news supporting the propaganda of the government and what the government was saying, like in this meme that I posted here. Or also when Berkin Elvan died, there were a lot of AKP supporters who were using social media to reproduce and spread the point of view of the government, to protect the police and to defend the police. So on the level of national politics, we can see that state surveillance played a big role in reproducing inequality between government supporters and those who didn't support the government. If we move from national to a regional politics, what I call regional politics, the situation is even different. For many Kurds, memes of Rojava and in support of Kobane were the only political content of the Facebook page. But even in this case, the mobilization on Facebook tended not to criticize the Turkish government. During the occupation of Kobane by ISIS, although many people consider the Turkish government responsible of the disaster, its responsibilities were not highlighted on social media. Most of the Facebook memes and pictures were addressing the issue from a humanitarian point of view, and not from a political one. Self-censorship depoliticized the public discourse and produced a rhetoric of the humanitarian crisis built on the circulation of images that were portraying wounded children and dead bodies. Not surprisingly, AKP Arab supporters didn't post anything about the Islamic State's occupation of Sinjar and Kobane then. But in July 2014, another war erupted in the region. It was the Israeli war against Gaza. Israel killed more than 2,000 Palestinian civilians. And Arabs from Mardin shared a lot of memes, pictures, and comments to denounce the state of Israel and express solidarities with Palestinians. So in summer 2014, the political material shared on Facebook was polarized between Arab AKP supporters and Kurds, BDP supporters. Of course, I mean, it's a generalization, so the difference is not so neat, but I'm generalizing. The first were denouncing the attack to Gaza, and the second, the Islamic State's occupation of Sinjar. And both groups were ignoring the other disaster going on. And it was interesting to see how the inhabitants of Mardin became politically active mainly in those events that were involving other actors in the region. And they were not involving directly, not local politicians, not the Turkish government. So only when they could express themselves by referring to other actors in the region that were not directly. So if we have to summarize what political participation on Facebook is like the results of both social and state surveillance that overlap with each other. So the effects of social surveillance are particularly visible in the case of local politics, even when people are quite active offline, like in the case of the political campaign. They don't take position online and do not support local candidates or political parties. They want to preserve their social relations. If we move then to the national politics, state surveillance and state's production of social media played an important role. AKP was actively using social media to create its own social media content and social media materials. So those in line with the Turkish government took advantage of the new opportunity of visibility offered by social media, whereas opponents of the government were quite limited by self-censorship. Whereas in the case of regional politics, we saw the interplay of both state and social surveillance. Everybody is free to take part in international politics, as far as the Turkish government is not criticized and local issues are not addressed. So, to summarize this political part of the presentation about politics, on the public space of Facebook, the visibility of AKP supporters' ideas has increased, where that of others has decreased. But the overall result is that, again, the public Facebook social media is, even in this case, a conservative space. On issues of politics, just like on the gendered presentation of the self and of their social relations. And this happens because what people care about on social media are relationships with relatives and friends and with others. Okay, so I think I'm perfectly in time. So I didn't have the chance to describe all the content of the topics of my book because there is no time. So I will go to the conclusion. So what kind of social change? Social media have expanded at the same time, as we saw, very private and very public spaces. But by doing so, they have also shaped different moralities and values appropriate for these two different settings. They have extended individualistic inclinations and romantic desires, and at the same time, they have made people even more concerned with the public performance of traditional values of honor and modesty. And they are concerned with the maintenance of good relationship with the other inhabitants of the town. My research has moved to the holistic perspective of the anthropological point of view that has looked at the entirety of human beings in their daily and ordinary lives. 15 months ethnography afforded the opportunity to see how domains commonly thought as divided and pertinent to politics, kinship, marriage, or love are intertwined with each other. From this position, I discovered that the most significant consequences of social media had to do with the withdrawing of the boundaries between private and public in all these different domains of people's lives, and on the contrast between the very private and the very public. So the social change brought by social media does not follow a linear route. but it's rather the result of two apparently opposite shifts that we examine throughout all the presentation. These findings can shed light on different big narratives about social media. The main one is the narrative of networked individualism. The sociologist based in Toronto, Barry Wellman, he's one of the main scholars of social media. He described the impact of social media, the internet and mobile phone as with this expression, networked individualism. He was saying basically that we are living in a society that is more based on individual-based networks more than on membership of groups. He was meaning that because of this network, because of this technology, we are able to choose our own relationship, our own friendship. And the groups is defining our identity and our behavior to a less extent than in the past. This is the main argument of Barry Wellman. And in somehow this happened in my field site as well, as we saw a lot of young people were using social media to create new kind of relationships that were not allowed in the offline world. And so in this sense we can say that social media led to this individually chosen networks society, to this networked individualism. But at the same time we also saw that exactly the opposite has happened. On the public Facebook wall, people were mainly communicating to their relatives and to the friends of their relatives. And so networked individualism moved along with forms of online family-based sociality. And these are visible in the way people portray themselves, but it's visible also in the way people use social media to get in touch with distant relatives all around the world. This is another topic I discussed in my book, but I will not have the time to discuss it now. It was really interesting to see how Facebook in particular was used by people to get in touch with distant relatives. It was very common, especially by Kurdish people, to have up to 300, 400 relatives on Facebook, spread all around Turkey and abroad. In some cases, these relatives were people of the same gender and similar age. So if we add to these few hundred people of the same gender and age, they kind of recreated the traditional family organization on social media. So again, this contraposition between networked individualism and individually chosen networks and group-centered relationship and reproduction of traditional family-based society. So, and this contradicts what traditional sociologists usually say. They like big narrative. They like to describe social transformation in one way, but anthropology and very localized ethnographic research can show that the transformation going on are more articulated and more complex. Thank you.
So thank you very much for this fascinating talk, and I have the honor to invite Professor Gülizger to the
This was really very, very good, thank you. And I must say she has been rather modest in introducing the project because I think when you look at social sciences in general, not just anthropology, but in general, what you see at this scale is certain standardized surveys being run across different countries and coming up with, to me, unfounded generalizations about what happens cross-culturally. So doing in-depth studies, 15 months each, in 11 different localities around the world is pretty rare and pretty amazing. So kudos for that. And secondly, you know, the methodology is very, very sound. So I'm an academic, so I've got to state that this is not just a study, because she's been talking about popular anthropology, or Leo has been talking about popular anthropology. So I want to clarify that what they do is extremely strong scientifically. So the aim of popularizing findings and understandings has not led this group of researchers to do less kosher work. So the scholarship is very, very, very strong, and I really, really appreciate this. Thirdly, I like your approach of not treating social media as if it were this alien, extraordinary, extra special thing that's unique and that's not like anything else. Obviously, there are clear analogies between communication on social media versus communication, standard classical communication. And I really like the fact that you were fully aware of those and you spoke to the relationship and linkages between the two. How social media deepens or broadens or bifurcates communication per se. And I think that's a unique aspect, at least I haven't read the book, but at least what I hear in between the lines in your talk, this is something I really, really appreciated. I'm gonna praise you a lot, and then I'm gonna kill you. Okay, next, she mentioned just at the very end that anthropologists, unlike sociologists, look at the specificities of the local. So I want to say a few more words about this. What I also really like in your work and in the work of your group is that studying these particularities of the local in their local context does not lead to them solely generating an interesting story, which they do, but by comparing this in 11 different locales, they can also generalize. Now, this is very, very, very unique and really nice. So I'm really looking forward to the comparative volume, actually. Finally, we hear lots of journalists, intellectuals, politicians, academics talk about everything has changed in Mardin. Mardin is a totally modernized place. Or nothing has changed in Mardin. Mardin is as traditional as it ever was. Well, Elisa is showing us the play and interplay of the traditional and the modern off of each other and within each other, and how they sometimes strengthen one thing and weaken another thing. So very, very, very nice. Let's open the floor for questions. I think you were first. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Mark Bergsock. I'm an honorary research fellow at the BIAA, and I wanted firstly to congratulate Lisa on this amazing piece of research, and I really look forward to the 2 volumes that are going to emerge quite soon. And I wanted to ask about the non-political sort of social, public, online spaces in Mardin that are created through Facebook. I mean, it seems that, you know, a lot of people say a lot of people, like executives of Facebook, say that with Facebook we're transplanting Western-centric modernity into all places around the world, but it's more that, you know, there's an exchange of local and global values, and actually you seem to suggest that conservative values are reimagined, but actually preserved, reproduced, and possibly even reinforced. So they might be altered, but actually maybe they're modernized, sort of reflexive traditionalization.
As you said, I mean, there was a reproduction of conservative values and conservative social norms that was brought even further. And in order to understand this, in the book I like to use this comparison with the wedding ceremonies, because there are so many analogies between the public Facebook and the wedding. Because traditionally the wedding has been the only situation in that part of Turkey where men and women used to gather together, and where they're showing off how well dressed they were, And Facebook is really similar. I mean, it reproduces the same setting in the Goffmanian terms. I mean, the audience is the same, the people are the same. It's the community, it's the large networks of relatives and friends of relatives. And so in this sense, the public social media is even more conservative. Because in the offline world, there are so many, in the urban place of the city, there are so many anonymous places, such as streets or cafes, or semi-anonymous. But on Facebook, no, it's the setting of the wedding ceremony. So in this sense, it's a reproduction of conservative social norms and conservative social values. But the new part, the modern part, let's call it in that way, is this entrance of the intimate and the domestic spheres into the public. This is what Facebook has changed. Traditionally also, not just in Muslim, but let's say in Muslim cultures, the intimate and the private spheres has always been quite well controlled and patrolled and protected from the outsider. And it has also like a very clear gender composition. So the private domain of the house as the place of the women that have to be protected from the gaze of the men. And Facebook is changing this a little bit. I mean, it's not completely as it happens in other places of the world, because people resist this. I mean, they try to resist that, but it's changing. So it's strange because it's a public place, very conservative, but at the same time it's very modern. So
I'm gonna take advantage of my position and add a comment, if I may. So does it seem like this is modernization of the liberated individual in a neoliberal, neoconservatism political context?
It could be. I mean, it could be, definitely. It could be described in that
yes.
way.
Which language they prefer in Facebook? Their native language, Kurdish, Arabic, or mostly they use Turkish to communicate each other?
Yeah, they mostly use Turkish. There were few people who were using Kurdish, but they were mainly university students or university educated people. And but the common language was Turkish. Yes.
But did you ask this question to people?
I think because I mean I was working mainly with young people, so teenagers and people up to 30, 35. And the language they mostly speak is Turkish. So on Facebook they were just, the language they speak in public space, it's Turkish. So on Facebook they were using the same language. So it was something that came automatically. And but of course there were exceptions. I mean, I met few friends, Kurdish friends, who were using Kurdish, and I saw that there were some Facebook page in Arabic as well, but I didn't have the chance to meet anybody who was running this Facebook page. But it was more something done intentionally as a reappropriation of traditional Arab culture. It was not something that was done by ordinary people in their daily life.
Yes.
Alfred Bravo, British Embassy. I was just wondering, did you also get large group but private political conversations, like big group WhatsApp threads or anything like that? Because one of the stereotypes of that part of Turkey is that kinship networks will sometimes tend to vote in the same way. And I was just wondering if social media was somehow being used to reproduce or reinforce that, or...
A lot. I mean, that's a really good question. And one chapter of my book is exactly about this topic. And so there were like Facebook, WhatsApp groups with 80 members, and they were all cousins. Cousins that in the last 20 years went to live in different parts of the city or of the town, but they met on Facebook. And in terms of politics, I mean, yes, I also came across of people that were using, they were changing the privacy setting of Facebook. It was something a very common practice. And they were creating closed Facebook groups. And they were discussing politics in these closed Facebook groups. So I don't know, I don't think it was really, really common, but it happened, yes.
Actually, that was my question. What about your accessibility to those settings?
Yeah.
And whether your in-depth interviews brought out things that realizing that you did not have access to those private settings.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was having access to this information through the interviews. Yes. But at the same time, I mean, it was something that was happening, but it was not the ordinary things. It was also like it happened that people had more than one Facebook profile. Probably people had 2 or 3 Facebook profiles, one used with the general public, that is what I focus on in this research. And then they had the Facebook profile just to flirt with women, not to be recognized by families members. Another one to talk with friends from the military service. And once I met a person, but this was an exception, who had 12 different Facebook profiles. And, so yes, I mean, there is a tendency to keep divided different spheres. And this clearly contradicts what Mark Zuckerberg in California said, that he said when Facebook will bring to social convergence, meaning with it that we will be obliged to put together in the same space different spheres. But this is not what happened in Mardin, and probably didn't happen in many other places of the region, provincial areas at least.
I would like to ask a question which is a continuation of our previous questions, or what you mentioned right now. Of course, in Facebook, one passes the boundaries of a local area and faces people or makes networking with people who have very different values. Did you face people, first question, breaking their relationship on Facebook because of conflicting values, maybe Western values? And does this resilience change between gender, male and female, or age?
I found that it was very common to unfriend people for political reasons. So this was one of the reasons why they were not discussing politics online, because if someone had a different political point of view, it was very common to stop the conversation and unfriend this person. And this is what I found quite commonly, and I think it was common both among women and men. Young people, it's implied, I'm not specifying all the time, but I'm talking about people in their 20s, 30s.
And about non-political subjects, was it the same or different?
Non-political subjects, no, I have not come across any kind of unfriending for not political reason on Facebook. Yes, the conversation became quite heated for political reasons, and it was also finishing quite soon.
Thanks. Thanks for great, interesting, fascinating, very multi-faceted research. One of those facets, I think, that you mentioned, but I'm just curious if you can elaborate a little bit on this, is the international or the global. So you mentioned that foreign policy issues are somehow an outlet, actually, away from what you call the dictatorship. So you can reflect on Sinjar or Gaza or Kobane without necessarily making the association to the current or the local government structure. So
yes,
I was quite curious to which extent that actually, because Gaza, Sinjar, all these things, and Kobane, all these things also have global significance. So to which extent then that these local communities, if you like, just reaffirm their inward-looking kind of, parochialism, if you like, by reflecting or projecting it onto this outside event, or these atrocities. And that actually goes back to some extent also to kinship. I mean, what about the linkages to the global discourses, and in particular, to which extent does it link up to relative or not relative diaspora communities?
Yeah, and that's very interesting. I mean, as you said, it was an expression of parochialism, of local identities, through the discourses of international politics, because that was the only way to express local political identities. And yes.
But is it, I understood that that's what you took from it, but just maybe to give some,
hope.
Is it maybe also more than that? Is it maybe also actually more. I wouldn't, be the kind of person that likes to agree with Zuckerberg, but maybe there is something, in terms of globalizing.
We would want it to be.
The intention may be parochialism, but it may be that, as a result of this, when you when you are joining the Kobani, if you like, solidarity networks and befriend these pages, then you get more interested in, whatever German anarchists think about it.
My idea is that Kurdish people in Turkey are not interested in Kurdish, what's going on in the Kurdish area of Syria because of social media. I mean, they've always been, and because they feel kind of a national common identity. So I don't think that Facebook and social media made my Kurdish people in Madi more interested in what was going on in Rojava. Not at all. And at the same time, it's not because of social media that the Arab population was involved in expressing solidarity with the Palestinians.
But
national media were also quite active about that, during the Israeli bombing of Gaza.
Oh, true, but then that already shows that there is another link up from Gaza all the way to, let's say, an anarchist bookshop in San Francisco. They will also talk about Gaza, Sinjar, Rojava. So why this, like you said, parochial linkage with those local, regional issues? Yeah. Will there then also be a more global kind of involvement in the networks or communities that are interested in those things for purely political reasons?
Yeah. I understand your point. I'm not really, because they were really parochial. They were not interested about.
How about their posts with other Kurds that they're cousins in Germany or their cousins in the UK?
In this case, it has to do mainly with looking at their Facebook images to understand what they are doing there, if they got married, if they have kids.
Not these political and non-family discussions?
No, it was not really political things. It was more... this social media really allowed people to get in touch with each other, and that was really clear. And it allowed the reproduction, the recreation of traditional kinship system, and but not in political terms. People were getting in touch with second or third cousins that have never met face to face before. Cousins living in Antalya, for example, and they were very happy to do that. And they were saying that this for them was a very important political action. But they were not expressing political.
If I may add, I haven't done any research on social media, but one of my doctoral students, Alev, she did a study on Kurdish music since the 70s up till now. And what she has found is, even before social media, all Kurds around the world used to communicate with each other through music and sending cassettes to each other, gifting of cassettes. So this communication across Kurds in different countries happened via other means. We know that it happened via other means.
Yeah, I forgot. Like YouTube was really used a lot to have access to Kurdish music and Kurdish cultural products. Yes, in that sense, definitely. I forgot to mention.
But it's not in terms of this universal freedom, public sphere, not in those terms. In terms of, again, very conservative solidarity lineage.
And national-based solidarity. It's more
or ethnic.
Global.
Or ethnic.
More than global.
Were there any friends or relatives who were suing each other for insulting their friends, relatives?
There were. That's another important topic I wrote about in the book. It was quite common. Also, there were different situations. It was quite common for people to take revenge, to destroy. They were destroying the reputation and the image of the person they wanted to hit. So, for example, a BDP Kurdish person suddenly had his Facebook password stolen, and someone posted the image of MHP, of the grey wolves there. And for him, it was kind of losing completely his reputation. It was like matter of honor, I would say, in traditional sense, no? and because everybody was having fun of him. So it was a joke, but it was a really bad joke because he lost his, how can I say, his
Face.
His face. So, but at the same time, there were really a lot of hackers application at a certain point, and that were stealing people's Facebook password. It was really common. And they were stealing passwords, and they were writing a lot of bad jokes to the female friends, or sexually oriented jokes, and more money-oriented jokes to male friends. So I heard so many stories about these things, and I couldn't explain which was the technical reason behind that. I had some ideas, people, after they had their password stolen, they started to see like porno images on their Facebook profiles, and again, for them it was losing the face completely. So I talked with some lawyers, and they came across different people who were going there to sue. I don't know who, because in some cases, it was, of course, they couldn't know who the person was. In other cases, there were some hackers. But at a certain point, there was a moral panic about this. So people decided to not open Facebook anymore because they were afraid to lose their faces. They were afraid to have their password stolen. And this happened specifically during the political campaign, before Twitter and YouTube were banned. I don't know if it was a coincidence or... nobody knows.
Any other questions? Yes.
Actually, going back to going back to the previous subject a little, maybe I was wondering, because all these political messages generally disseminate through group like Facebook groups or maybe pages, so it's a little bit more anonymous in that sense. Like, a couple of people come together, they form a group, and they disseminate the political messages through those channels, but not from their individual Facebook pages. So this also maybe explains, because you're focusing on individuals and individual Facebook pages, but not, or other pages, but not group pages, which are really politically active. In sharing messages. Or organizing people, I guess that's more or less.
It is absolutely true. In fact, I wrote about it in the book. I didn't have the time now to expand it more. Yes, people use fake profiles in the sense they are anonymous, and they follow political groups. But they would never do that when with their like public Facebook. They don't do that with their normal, ordinary Facebook page. But they do it in an anonymous way. So yes, definitely. And and also this was something that I investigated mainly through interviews, because I couldn't really look at it directly. But yes.
Yes.
How many people accept your friendship in Facebook?
I had between 200 and 300 people.
Is it enough to generalize what Mardin think? Because I have some friends from Anatolia, maybe 200 people. I have a different picture. But how is it? 100 people? Is it a bit problematic?
It was almost 300.
Oh, 300.
And yes, the issue of generalization is always an issue when you do ethnography. So of course you have to try to understand well how things go on. But it was not just looking at their Facebook profile. It was like 15 months spent just to talk with people about this topic, and it's really a lot. 15 months. For 15 months, I just talked about this topic with the people of Mardin. So not everybody was accepting my friendship. So I was using the observation I did online. I was comparing what I looked online with what people told me over these 15 months. And I did more than 100 interviews and 300-400 questionnaires. So it's not just the observation of the Facebook profiles.
Get a case study.
Any other questions?
As you know, it's not a conspiracy, new world order and implementation that we are facing with for the great Israel project. Did you meet with people that are aware of the new world order?
In what sense? No, I'm not sure.
Haven't you heard the Zionist? It's a political ideology. It's not an anti-Semitism. It has nothing to do. The Zionism is a political ideology. Did you notice the youth? Are they aware of the new world order? Because where they are living in Mesopotamia, and they are really on the target, like all Turkey.
Yeah, I think, I mean, everybody has its own ideas of the world order.
It's a little bit anti-Semitic question, I think.
It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. I am not anti-Semitic. I'm just talking about Zionism. It's a different thing.
I think that I don't think that Israel was.
Jews don't want to occupy whole Middle East.
Why you aren't? This is a question.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't think that. Yeah, Israel was not like the main concern, definitely, of the people living there. Just during the war, they were.
Yes.
I'm not usually the one that shifts the thing from politics to the social, but I will do it. What about the Dikodu? I think this would be like gossiping. Would be the very typical anthropological,
Yes.
like cultural anthropological aspect to it. And what about it?
Yeah, that was another very important component of social media, and people really enjoy to spend hours and hours of their time gazing and looking at other people's Facebook profile. So it was one of the main reasons of like raison d'être of Facebook, looking at what people were posting and making the dikodu and gossips and commenting about them. So I spent literally like it happened like to spend a couple of hours with a friend looking at the Facebook profile of the cousins living in Germany, for example, and she was showing me how such a beautiful car we bought, the kind of beautiful daughter he has, and so yeah, it's a place under like surveillance in this sense as well. So
now that they're open the floor
Yes.
for another subject, I would like to ask something about cultural heritage, because at the beginning of your talk you said that you made most of the research in the new town,
yes.
whereas there's the reason why Mardin is so very attractive for many people to go and visit is the old town. So I was wondering if you came across with anything that the local communities post on Facebook about the old town being like pride of that town, or are they more like we don't understand why people are coming here, because you also mentioned that they are much more fond of living in the new town.
Yeah. There were quite few Facebook groups about the cultural heritage of Mardin. And so yes, it was used. Cultural heritage, and it was also related to the Arab culture and the recreation of, appropriation of traditional Arab culture, so they were. But yes, there was continuously this this link between attraction to the modern city, to the modern Yeni Shehir, and at the same time it's like attachment to the very old cities. So it was very common for people who could afford it to buy a house in a new city and living there, and going in the summer back to the old city for summer. And so they were complaining about the new city because they were living there, and they were saying how beautiful the old city is, but they were not living there. They moved to the old city, so yes.
Yes.
That kind of relates to what Leo asked about Dedikodu. I'm wondering, because we always think of like the social media as enlarging the social space, but now I think just the time that you spend looking at your cousin's babies from Germany, you don't spend it on local Dedikodu, right? So to put it in more abstract terms, isn't the enlargement of the social sphere into this kind of virtual world also kind of then at the same time taking away from the physical, real kind of social world and the kind of gatherings? I was kind of interested to see that there's a huge amount of politicization. People go to party rallies, but we cannot see it on social media. So it's an interesting interaction, I think, between like the old social sphere or the physical social sphere and the virtual social sphere. But I guess what I'm trying to ask, are they kind of competing with each other to some extent?
I don't know if they compete. I think definitely they both exist and they are both expanding. I mean, it's not just that social media is expanding one and not the other. I think they are both expanding. So the local and also the transnational, yes. But I wouldn't say they are competing. They are rather probably reinforcing with each other. And yes, so I mean, both these levels were present. So as I said, it was very common for people to have 300, 400 Facebook friends on that were relatives from all around Turkey and abroad as well. So I wouldn't say that these compete with the local.
Because otherwise you may really be desperate to go and see their baby. This way you already saw it, like, and you can skip the trip. It's good carbon footprint, but you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they probably met once in somewhere, but they're still in touch online. Yeah,
you're probably aware of the term hemşehrilik. Hemşehrilik. Some in the audience might be. Hemşehri means people from the same town, literally. And this is something very strong in this geography, regardless of your ethnicity. So the 300 cousins and keeping in touch with them is part of a group-centered relationship obligation. So I was thinking, reflecting on your question too, perhaps you want to superimpose another dimension on this individually chosen networks versus group in terms of the social and the more public political.
Yes.
Just an idea.
Yeah, it's really. It's really interesting, yeah. Yes, definitely.
Here's another question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay. Oh my God. All of a sudden, hands went up. How many more questions?
5 minutes.
Okay, so we'll take you and then these 3 hands and that will be it.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask if and how the Kurdish identity was portrayed in the social media. For instance, we see that in national holidays here in Turkey, every Turkish citizen is changing the profile picture to a Turkish flag or Kemal Atatürk. I don't know if something similar was happening in Southeast.
Yes, I mean for
Kurdish identity.
For reasons of self-censorship and actual censorship, it didn't happen so often. And so they were not really reaffirming their Kurdish identity on the ordinary Facebook so much. They were probably doing more on through Facebook, anonymous Facebook profiles, but it was not so common. And also sometimes, I came across so many stories of people who had their Facebook page completely censored. Yes, it was quite common. So.
Were you one of the 3 hands? Yes, okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I have this question that's a little bit out of personal curiosity. I was wondering how your fieldwork went in terms of your life. I was reading something about I was reading the book based on a field study in Ankara the other day. It was a study based on a slum area of Ankara, and this researcher, a young woman, she said she settled in there for 6 months or so. But she also had her parents with her. And she said that was really helpful in terms of her relationship with her neighbors, with the other people, and etc. So if it's not too personal, can I ask, were you living by yourself? Did you have people living with you? How did you mingle with the people around you? Stuff like that.
I was living on my own and I shared the house with 2 different people. There is a university in Mardin that is called Mardin Abtuklu University. And there were a few foreigners and few professors working there. And for me it was useful because I was identified by the locals as belonging to that kind of group. So the first few months I shared the house with a Turkish friend who was working there, and then I shared a house with another instructor of English language who was working at Mardin Abtuklu University. But in this sense, because I was alone, it was easier for me to have access to different kinds of people. And was jumping from one place to the other, different sectors of the society. On the other hand, it was more difficult. I've been harassed by men several times and all these kind of problems. But on the other hand, it was easier to be alone and to have access to different sectors of the society.
Out of curiosity, the paper you're reading, is that by Tuğba Üstüner?
No, it's, the first name is Burcu, but I don't remember the second
Okay.
name.
Okay. Yes. Yes, you.
Thank you. My question is short. I wonder about the media literacy level of people. If they know about privacy settings of Facebook, the results could change what we do.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understood.
The privacy settings on Facebook, are they aware of them?
Yes, they are really aware, much more aware than me or any other person I know in all Europe. They are really well aware. I discovered new functions when I was in Mardin. They change, they are really careful to change every single privacy setting in the best way, because there is, it's very important to not lose face and reputation, especially women in many cases. So,
and the last question.
I wanted to quickly ask about how sports are discussed in the people that you know, observed in individual and in public settings, because sports involves facets of your own life, politics, culture.
Sports.
Or if it was discussed.
More than discussed, I was friends with some teachers, sports teachers. They were teaching sports, and they were using sport again to show off a bit. So whenever they were taking part in any football match, they were posting pictures here and there. If they were traveling to Istanbul to watch a football tennis match, they were posting the pictures of them. But I wouldn't say that it was really a discussion. It was mainly displaying and portraying how active they were in taking part in these different activities.
Okay, so that ends it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for.
I have one request before we end. Please do not share on social media some parts of the things that I've said.
Levels of privacy.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for this vibrant talk and this vibrant commentary. It has been a real pleasure having you both here.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining on a cold Ankara night. And you are more than welcome to join us for a small reception over there and continue the discussion. Thank you very much.